funny. Um, Hi, Cody.
Hi, Corinna. How are you doing?
Oh, we're both sort of chuckling, the viewers, because when I said, "Is it okay for me to record?" Cody was like, "Mm." And so got that on the front of the beginning, or we were both laughing. I'm like, "Did we get?" So
I don't know.
a couple of thumbs up. I have a theory too, Cody. Just to start this in a really awkward way, I have a theory about you, and why you love to take silly photos or like with your silliness. My theory is even though you are super charming and handsome now, that you may have been a late bloomer. You compensate for like your previous awkwardness by going silly. And I would love to know how close I am with that one.
Oh, yeah, piss off, Corinna. That's
Also,
you
it's just
nailed it. Yeah.
about how you know you're like onto something when someone wants to tell you to piss off, or get away from them. Of like, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is.
Yeah, you nailed that right on the head. Yeah, I was an ugly fat kid. And so yeah, this is
I
like
don't
a this is a recent thing. So yeah.
I don't know if I believe that A. I think you may be a harsh critic, but it's so funny because I don't know if you guys have noticed this in the social medias or things. Like anytime we ask Cody for a picture, there's always like a funny, silly picture that he wants to hand us. And I was like, he is so charming and handsome. Why is he always making silly faces? And I'm like, oh, like you said, this charming, handsome thing must be new.
Yeah, and I'm just like the least photogenic person you've ever met, Corinna. It's terrible. Yeah, I look constipated and or like every time I try to take a picture, it's awful. Yeah.
I don't believe it, but maybe we'll see someday when you're not mugging for a photo.
We'll see. We'll see.
This is actually a beautiful foray into today's topic, which is sovereignty. So thank you for joining me here in my Zoom room today, Cody, to talk about the first stage or the ground zero, if you will, of the 7 stages of the circling approach, which is sovereignty. I've
I'm
got
excited.
stuff to say about sovereignty, but would you would you like to start with your understanding or your conceptualization of sovereignty, or would you prefer that I do? I'll let you choose today.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and then I'll riff off of
Want to riff off? Okay.
yeah.
So for our viewers who may not be as familiar with the 7 stage approach to circling, um, for me, sovereignty is kind of like it's the first stage of the 7 stages of circling, but I also like to call it like the ground zero because I truly, and I'm so interested to hear about your own experiences, Cody. Like I truly believe that it is kind of like the foundation from which all the other stages emerge. And so sovereignty in a nutshell is about the more connected we can be to ourselves, our own thoughts, sensations, experiences, meaning making, values, things like that, belief systems. Like the more we can be connected to ourselves, the more we are able to connect to others, the
Mm,
more we're able to notice how we are being impacted by being with another one, like listening to them or, just being in their energy or watching their facial expressions. Like you have to kind of know yourself in order to understand how you're being impacted. And so that's kind of like layer one of sovereign. And then layer two of sovereign is like the outward expression of that. Like,
mm,
how well am I able to share what's going on for me in a clear, clean, non-judgmental, like objective kind of way.
mm,
One of the things I love most about sovereignty and how we teach sovereignty is it really helps us understand the distinctions between our lived experience and our projections, you know,
mm,
and that fine line between like what did I actually hear versus or what did I actually see, observe, experience versus what did I make it mean?
mm,
Because sometimes that can happen so fast, that like whatever you're taking in, and then the meaning making happens so quickly that you
mm.
collapse like the observable facts with the meaning you made about them. And then that becomes
Mm,
a little kind of problematic exchange where we start projecting on the other person, like, you did this. We're like, no, I didn't do that, or I didn't say that. I said this, and you made it mean that, and now we're off to
mm,
the races. You know, it's that. And some of my favorites there was like, well, you were disrespectful, or you made me angry. It's like, oh, no, 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 slow down,
mm,
slow down. Like, when you said this, I felt angry, or
mm,
when you said this, here's how it landed for me, here's how it occurred for me, and then here's how I felt. And if we can like slow that down, there's so much more room for shared understanding and curiosity and, like collaboration or share, like weaving a shared reality, as we call it,
mm.
versus that like pushing against each other. Like it's really, I like to say often, like, you can share anything if you can figure out how to do it in a sovereign manner, and it's gonna be okay. Like you're not gonna evoke defensiveness, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
if you can be, sharing from this like grounded, open, sovereign place, you can get through almost any kind of miscommunication or clash of understanding, clash of desire, clash of needs and values if you're both in this kind of sovereign space.
Mm,
And so we often talk about sovereign. So there's the on the in like on the way in and the way that you're receiving, and then on the way out and what you're expressing. And
mm,
then we talk about sharing impact as a big part of sovereignty. Rather than sharing judgments or conclusions, we share impact. We share the physiological impact, like, oh, I noticed I like cringed or braced or felt like
mm,
protective, or like, oh, I noticed I felt sad, or I noticed I felt excited when that happened. Like we might like the physiological like impact sensations wise, or the psychological emotional impact, like something
mm.
we were a feeling or something we were wanting for you. Like, oh, I noticed when you said that, I really wanted to like hug you, or like I heard that, but I wanted you to say it with more like conviction or more gusto. I noticed I wanted like more information, or I wanted like, something. So like noticing
Yeah,
wanting for someone, noticing how we're being impacted physiologically, emotionally. And so it's like there's a sovereignty that comes like on from the inside out, and there's a sovereignty that comes, from the
mm.
outside in. I did the motions differently. I did not match them. Not congruent at all. But I hope it was clear for you. And then if not, when you try to make sense of it, hopefully it'll make it clear for our viewers. So I'd love to hear from you, Cody. Like, what do you want to tweak or add about my rambling about sovereignty and the way that you have been understanding and
Mm.
experiencing it?
Yeah, it's like I really like the distinction that you made between the being grounded in myself aspect of sovereign, and then the me coming from that place and then talking to you from that sovereign, like solid ground.
Mhm.
And like as we've been going over and talking about it more, like there's so many like different words and phrases and stuff that I think apply to that first aspect really well. Like you have all of your shadow work, you have the like, am I projecting? And like, am I, or is this like a counter projection, or what, like all of those fun things, like, oh, you're not actually angry, I'm angry, and I'm just like, I'm projecting all of that anger onto you, and that's completely changing this dynamic. Yeah, there's like all of this really cool, interesting stuff that's all wrapped up inside of it. And um, like what's been so interesting about it is that like you said, if you're going to be talking to somebody and you want to be coming from a sovereign place, like what you really need is to be able to say like what you actually are experiencing and what you're feeling and what's going on for you. And like, I know, at least for myself, like when I started this program, I was not very good at doing that. Like maybe like a little bit better than the average person, but like still like really far away from like actual true feelings and emotions and all of that of what was going on. Um, Hey, sorry, we got somebody knocked on the door just now. um, yeah, but it's like if you have to be truly connected to what your own lived experience is before you can actually step out and tell somebody what that experience is. Like, you know, the I'm rambling a little bit because that threw me off and I'm trying to, get back into camera mode. But yeah, like going through and working on this, like what's really been coming up is like, oh, I need to know myself and what's going on inside of me in a very true and honest way before I can actually connect to you well. And that's been a continual theme that keeps coming up where like if I don't actually know what's going on in me at any moment, that's going to have a huge effect on how my conversations with anybody are going to come across. And so if I'm having a really bad day and I haven't even recognized I'm having a bad day yet, and I come home and I'm talking to my wife, like that can be a great way to start a whole bunch of fights and arguments that never needed to happen.
Right. Yeah. It's like the perfect storm because if you're not recognizing your own internal weather, apparently the dog likes that one. If you're not recognizing your own internal weather, then you think it's the other person, or you don't
Mm.
recognize that you're getting it on them.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So you
And
said that like as you've been moving through the program, this is coming to you more and more.
mm,
I would love to know if, again, what only raised kids who know exactly what they want and aren't afraid to pursue it. Like whether they
mm.
be my actual human children or the fur babies, they're like, I'd like to be in this chair with you. I don't care what you're doing. So I would like to know, like, if you can, reflect for a moment, like, so what is it, 10, 12 weeks ago, before
Mm.
you started the artist circling program to where you find yourself now, like, what are you noticing that's different in you? And like, what should we be, celebrating and acknowledging and congratulating you for? And then
Mm.
what are the new growth edges that you've discovered, as you climb higher on your own evolutionary ladder, you get new perspective and you're like, oh, and here's my next step. So I'd love to know both of those things
Mm.
if they're accessible to you in your awareness.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite what might be on the horizon because it's been really surprising throughout the entire process. But like, yeah, it's been so interesting because at like again at the beginning of the program, like there's definitely is like I knew about myself that I had this disconnect from emotion that I wanted to work on. And the downstream effects of that, of really practicing, like, okay, what's going on inside of me? Like, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What do I want? What do I want for you when I'm talking with you? Like going through and doing all that and doing all of those practices with other people, like, trying to do it on my own too. It's been it's been very illuminating in that, like, there's like a new piece I've been finding in myself, or I've been finding very surprisingly that it's been getting easier and easier to just be myself. Where, like, now when I go into conversations, there's not that need to be somebody for somebody. I don't need as much to be like, oh, hey, I'm therapy Cody. Like, I'm here to help you out. Or I'm Saint Cody and I'm here to heal your soul or whatever the hell, kind of thing I have going on. And instead, it's just been like, I feel very comfortable just showing up with whatever I have in any given day. And yeah, it's been real interesting because like around the time that all of this started to happen, that I was like been finding these ways to deepen. And by the way, that like just being yourself and like just showing up as you actually are and not as you expect others to want you to be or anything like that. It's like it's been both the easiest thing in the world to do, but also the absolute hardest.
Okay, I'm gonna slow you down right there and just ask. Okay, we're in sovereign, so let me share.
Mm.
So I noticed like a little bit of a happen in
Mm.
me. Said that like because you said it like you said it in a you way, like by the way, being yourself, you know,
Mm.
um, you know, that how much better
Mm.
that was. And I was like, I noticed, I was like, what I want, I was like, oh, I want to see what happens if Cody does that from first person and says, I've learned that being myself and showing up as myself. So I'm just wondering, would you indulge me and try saying it from first person and see if it feels any different? Like, I'm so curious.
Yeah, I'm feeling yucky about it immediately, but I'll do it.
Ooh,
Yeah.
we'll unpack that later. I promise. To share that
Hmm.
bit of knowledge with me again from the first
Hmm.
person. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Yeah. I found as I've been working through this process that being myself is both the easiest and the hardest thing in the world to do. Yeah. That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Appreciate it.
Okay. What do you notice saying it in the first person?
It's more assertive. It's more sovereign, to bring it to that point. But
Do you notice like relaxation? Did you get tenser? Did you feel more solid? Do you feel more grounded? Do you feel more here? Do you feel
mm,
closer to me having said it first person versus third person?
yeah, all of the above. Yeah, I thought that there was going to be like a pulling away from myself if I tried to do that, but yeah, I feel actually more present, more here. The story feels like I own it more instead of a something that feels a little bit farther away. So,
I'll share like I feel so much more connected and like almost more alive in the
mm,
conversation. Like when you said it the first time and I was like, what's this kind of like
mm,
action I'm having? I felt like you were like reporting something to me.
mm.
And when you said it in the first person, like I felt like you were sharing with me. If that makes
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah, I was reporting before, and now I feel like, the Zoom space just disappeared, and it's like, oh, I'm talking to Korenna. I'm not, giving a book report at school. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for indulging me on that. I don't know. All right. Where do we go from here? What else do you want to share now that we're in the sharing mode? It's a
Mhm.
recording mode.
Yeah. Just a lot of interesting stuff, kind of with being in Sovereign more and trying to be in myself more often, because like like the last couple of months have been like really hard in a lot of big ways, where there's like some very old friendships and relationships that I've had that kind of like fell apart and exploded all of a sudden.
Mhm.
And, I think if that had happened like a year or two ago, I think I'd be an absolute mess right now. But there was something about like, I felt very confident going into those situations in a way that I haven't felt confident in relationships before, where like even as all this really difficult stuff is starting to show up, and there's all these really strong feelings, and like there's anger and there's sadness, and then all of that stuff going on, instead of like trying to hide from all of those feelings and then trying to play a role for everybody and trying to keep things contained,
Mhm.
instead of doing that, I actually felt like the mental image that comes to mind, it's like a rock in the ocean, where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, okay, I'm actually here, I'm fine,
Yeah.
all of this is shit. Just, it is what it is. But from this place, it's like, as these feelings and everything are coming up, like I'm able to own them and be like, yeah, dude, I'm really angry about this. And as I feel the need to set boundaries with different people around different things, I found that it's been a lot easier to do that. To say, hey, this is my line, this is where I'm at. And to feel really confident in that instead of being like, oh, I think I'd like it if you didn't say those bad things about me to other people type thing. And so yeah, and things did not go great from me switching into that kind of mode.
Mhm.
But I think the most unexpected bit is that as all of that's been going on, like I've been feeling way better. Like something about those relationships not showing up in the way they were before, like kind of set something free inside of myself. And
Ooh.
now it's even easier to be, that rock kind of just sitting and moving through through life. So,
Can I share like the image that came to me as you were just
mm,
like when you said the rock in the ocean, the thing that was most prevalent for me was like I had this feeling of like instead of being swept up by the current, like
mm,
this solid rock and like the current, you were allowing the current to move around you and like and you weren't getting swept up and carried with it.
mm,
That image was like connected to that those dots that you were saying like I wasn't trying to figure out like who they wanted me to be or like how I should show up to make it okay,
mm,
but more so like no, I am this solid rock and there's this current rushing around me, but like there was like a
mm.
congruency for you, right? Like a consistency of like I know who I
Yeah.
what I want for myself and for my relationships and like whatever's going to happen around me like you felt that like truth and that solidness and like it
Mm,
wasn't fun or like like you know it might not have turned out the way you hoped like
mm,
felt grounded and secure and like confident in your choices.
mm.
Is that close? Is that am I getting the experience?
Yeah, you're nailing it. Yeah. And I think like if I had like gone into that same situation without all of this practice that we've been doing for Sovereign, I think like I would have handled it okay, but not nearly as well as I have. I
Got it.
think, like I have that kind of desire to, be in a strong, firm place with myself when I make those decisions, but there's always like a weirdness and an ickiness that I had
Question.
associated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, questioning. It's like, is this actually what I want? Do I actually feel this way? Like, am I seeing things wrong? Like, there was always a lot of self-doubt
Hmm.
and wishy-washiness
Hmm.
that kind of left the foundation of whatever decisions I was making kind of, it was more sand like than rock like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that because we've been going through and been practicing it so much, the like what ended up happening was that like I felt a lot more confident
Hmm.
with those decisions. Like it's like, okay, I know what being me and being inside of myself in a way that I really like and that feels peaceful,
Hmm.
I know how that shows up.
Hmm.
And when all of this, shitty stuff kind of came in, that didn't move. And so instead of like spending all of my time trying to get back to that spot while making a decision with all the craziness, it
Yeah.
was just, I'm already in that peaceful spot. And then from that place, I was able to make all of these big and really difficult decisions and feel really good about it throughout the process, which was bonkers.
Yeah. It's funny. I notice I'm feeling torn between like feeling really like excited and proud for like it sounds so empowering to be like, oh, I had all these difficult
Mm,
decisions to make, but I felt confident, and I
mm,
wasn't second guessing myself. And like I know you didn't say this, but like it sounds like you're like, and so I didn't have regrets, like
mm,
didn't have to second guess, and I didn't have to look back and go, oh, I wish I had done this differently, or I wish I had done that. It's like like
mm,
that's the sense I'm getting. Like so I'm feeling torn between feeling like proud and excited for you that, and then also just feeling sad, that this
mm,
happened at all. Like it sounds like you had some really long-term relationships that like were an important part of your history that kind of went haywire and were showing up in ways that didn't feel good to you.
mm,
Had to
mm,
draw some hard boundaries or have some like real confrontational conversations with people about
mm.
like I'm not here for that, and if
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel a little sad almost like and I don't know if this is true or not, but it sounds like you kind of were trying to call people in to kind of like shift the way they were behaving and they just weren't taking your invitation and you had to kind of like distance yourself from them. Am I reading too much into that or is that close to what kind of went?
No, yeah, that's very close. I'm not going to try to, get into any of the specifics just for, everybody's sake, but yeah, it was very much that kind of thing. Like, hey, I'm here's what I see is going on. I'm setting a boundary, and then I'm kind of leaving it in your court now.
Yeah.
And like as you were kind of reflecting on that back, it was so interesting. Like I hadn't really thought about it in this way before, but like yeah, I think when I started coming into circling, there was, I knew in some part of me, it's like, hey, I want to have that deeper connection to my emotions and my feelings. There's a world there that I'm missing out on, and I've been avoiding it probably for a reason. So, but I'm gonna try. And looking back on it, there was a lot of fear around big, strong, intense emotions because they feel or they felt like sweeping, like they're gonna take me, they're gonna carry me away, and then I'll be gone, and then whatever little bastion I have built up in my brain is going to just get destroyed. It's going to be terrible. Like that was kind of always the that fear in the background. But like as you were reflecting that sadness back, it's like, yeah, like I like that is true in a sense still, where like there was that flood of emotions that kind of came in, but I didn't get swept up away in it, which is strange. Like I feel really, really sad. Like I could cry like very easily about it even still. But like I also feel a deep okayness with being inside of that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's like I can actually be in the depths of all of this stuff going on inside me because I have that one place where it's like, okay, this is good, this is me. And then everything kind of works around that.
Ooh. Yeah, that brings me back to you saying, like, I feel more confident in myself. I know myself more. And so I'm not easily pulled into showing up as I think people want me to.
Mm,
Like, it brings me back to that and like just how grounding and like solid and comforting that feels of like I know myself. I trust myself. I trust my emotions. I trust my values. I trust my, needs, desires, expectations,
mm,
so that I don't feel pulled into that, that people pleasy that
mm,
psychology
mm,
calls it. Like I don't feel pulled to be a version of myself or present myself in a way like I can just be me,
mm. Yeah.
open conversation saying like I feel so much more comfortable. Well, once I nudged you to get into first, like way you were able to say, I feel so much more comfortable be
Mm,
myself. I'm more comfortable and more confident in who I am. And like
mm.
look at all this magical stuff that's downriver from that. No pun not intended, or like down ocean from that. I love it. And I love this like kind of analogy of like I am a rock in the ocean. And even when the current gets tumultuous around me, I'm no longer getting churned up like the sand. Like I'm still this rock in the ocean, navigating these
Mm.
unpredictable currents.
Yeah, yeah. And it's been really nice because I think like if that was just my inner experience and that was everything, I would be extraordinarily happy with how all of this has been going on and in this progress I feel that I've been making with myself. But it hasn't just been like my internal world. It's been other people have been picking up on it and noticing it too, which is the craziest part. Where like, my brothers, they told me like, hey, like I don't know what's been going on, but like you've been a lot cooler to hang out with like the last couple months. Or like, relationship with my wife. She's like, hey, like I can tell like you're chiller. You're
Mm,
not as rambunctious or as, as crazy in
yeah,
some ways.
yeah. Well, because when you're
Or
around
yeah,
trying to figure out which version of you is appropriate, that can feel kind of frantic.
yeah, yeah. And like
For you,
franticness is
definitely for them. And when you stop doing it, they notice it.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
And like and around that same time, like I just started a new job, like in the last couple of weeks. And, I went in and, getting to see this whole entire new group of people, like I walked into that situation like with this centeredness.
Mhm.
And like my coworkers had been describing me as like, oh yeah, Cody, he's really calm. Like he's really like he's solid, he's chill,
Mhm.
which is not how anybody ever would have described me at any point in my life before, which has been
Oh my
like,
God. I love knowing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love
yeah,
you feel calmer and people are now describing you as like the rock. You're chill, you're calm, you're solid, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I have a curiosity, and then I'll let you go. I've taken way too much time of your time on a Saturday, but my other curiosity is that as you feel more solid and more connected to yourself and more at home in yourself, I'm I'm wondering if that allows other people to be more connected to you, because
Mm,
if almost like there's more of you to relate to and to like
mm,
be intimate with. And so I'm wondering, I know your brother said, hey, you're easier and more fun to hang out with, but I'm wondering, have you noticed that like maybe relationships are getting a little deeper as you connect to yourself more? Are you able to connect more deeply to your wife or your siblings or the friends that made the culling that were still there? I'm dark.
I love that and I hate that.
Sorry.
Excuse me. No, but like, yeah, it's like it's been real interesting because, I feel like I've done some stuff with the Circling Institute before. And so I've had some of those circling skills, and all of those have been just extraordinarily helpful, especially in my line of work where it's like I just get to talk to people all day. And I think that beforehand, people like it was easy to talk to people and to, have those deeper conversations and to invite people or to invite and be invited into a deeper space for people. And that was always really nice. But it always felt like a little bit effortful
Mhm.
going into it. Like, oh, I'm about to start practicing some circling.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, like, it always ended up turning, or it always turned out very well. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
but what's been different since, really working on Sovereign specifically is that I don't really have to try to have those conversations initiated. I don't have to be the one like reaching out and being like, hey, no, let me into your world a little bit. Like, let me see what's going on. It's been a little bit more opposite, has been almost the feeling where like I'll be talking with somebody, like that curiosity is still there, but
Mhm.
it's like it's initial.
Mhm.
And then it's like people are opening up a little bit easier just of their own accord. They're like, hey, what do you think about? And then it gets started that way instead of me being like, hey, let's go sit down somewhere and let's talk. Kind
Yeah.
of that split, if that makes any sense.
It might. Let me see share how it's making sense to me and see, you tell me how close I am. Like what I think I heard and what you shared is like previously, because you've been, on the peripheries of our experience for almost like for 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
But like previously when you were like when you would come and like once every 6 months do a little 2-day workshop, like then you would take those skills and those tools and then you would practice them in your
Mm,
world, and you had great results and you really enjoyed it, but it not only did it feel effortful, but it was a like a conscious practice
mm,
that now that you're kind of like in the year-long program and it's more like intertwined into your daily life and you're having a more
mm,
immersive experience, that those same skills and tools have almost become innate and effortless.
mm.
So instead of doing something, you are being some way that is
Yeah, exactly.
evoking these experiences, rather than creating these experiences.
Mm,
The way that you are carrying and holding and conducting yourself is kind of like evoking these
mm.
changes and experiences with people, as opposed to you having to like create them as you did in the past. So that's how I understood what you shared. Um, am I close?
Yeah, that was, you said it better than I did, actually. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. yeah. And it's like it's still messy for sure. Like, trying to drop into sovereign, it's like it can take a little while.
Mhm.
Um, if I'm just being by myself or if I'm talking to somebody. And
Mhm.
especially if I'm talking to somebody, because you have to kind of invoke your own vulnerability with somebody.
Oh.
And yeah, especially like with all that emotion stuff kind of in the background still, it's like, okay, like I can see that you're going through something right now. And I know that I'm going to drop into that with you, but like I don't like dropping in necessarily all the time, but I will.
Yeah.
And then it's like it takes a little bit to get that going. And it takes a while still to kind of shut off that old machinery, right? Like,
Definitely.
um,
Because we are conditioned from birth to kind of communicate and connect in a more controlling way. Like we're
mm,
not socialized to be vulnerable. You know,
yeah.
ability is what creates connection and depth.
Mm,
And it's what invites, more vulnerability. So if we're, listening to control or to persuade or to defend ourselves, or you're like looking for
mm,
agreement so that you can feel safe, or you're listening for where they don't agree so that you can change their minds, like that's an
mm.
entirely different experience than if
Yeah, yeah.
fully solid, sovereign, grounded, and you're like, I'm listening just to understand where you are because I'm not afraid of being persuaded or attacked. Like I'm solid enough that like I can understand even your objections or your contrary
Mm,
beliefs. And I'm not nervous about that. Like, and I trust
yeah.
myself to hear you, to, like make sure that I'm understanding you correctly, and then be curious even in my challenges or even in my
Mm,
disagreements. Like I can totally see
mm.
how it's a different experience. And like you said, like human beings and human relationships, they are messy. So it's not like it's not messy. It's just not like scary anymore, or not as scary,
Yeah.
as nerve-wracking as it used to be. Like it's almost like because of the grounded sovereignty, like you're like, oh, and this is going to be messy, and I trust myself to navigate that messiness.
Yeah. 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 I really like that last bit. It's like, I'm there's all this stuff that's going to go on as soon as we drop into this place, but I feel really comfortable sitting inside of that suck with you for a little while.
Yeah.
And if you need a little bit of help getting to your little rock, I feel like I'm actually in a spot where I can do that for you now. Like, is it okay
Mm,
if I share like one last story before we go?
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Cool, yeah. So like the example that immediately pops to mind is like in the last little bit at my previous job, um, I was sitting down with one of my coworkers and like we were like it was pretty late in the day, um like we were both staying late to get some work done. There was like a whole situation that was going on. But like we were sitting there and we were just kind of tip tapping on our computers and getting paperwork stuff and like we started to talk just a little bit, and then she very slowly kind of started to open up and talk about some difficult stuff for her. And I could tell that she was like probing the vulnerability waters a little bit, like, hey, if I do this, am I gonna be okay? And so like I did my best to to be present with that. And then she kind of started to open up more and more. And at the end of that conversation, she just ended up opening up a lot, and she shared some stuff that was just really really hard to hear, and really sad.
Mm.
And like I noticed immediately, just again, line of work, like I wanted to go into therapy mode. Like I wanted to be like, oh cool, like I have all of, like the treatments and lists of like how you deal with trauma and stuff. Like, all right, what are the right things to say? What are the right things to do? How are we going to reframe things? And like like all of that like just started kicking up and going online. But then like that sovereign bit kind of started to show up a little bit, and it's like, dude, you don't need to do all that. And instead, it was just like, you know, that I dropped into that feeling space with her more. And instead of, trying to therapize her, I actually just got really, really sad and I started to cry. And I was like, hey, like that, like, I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
And then she started to cry. And we just sat in silence for, for a good while.
Yeah.
And, then something else happened and then we had to kind of drop out of that feeling space. But
Mm.
um yeah, like later, like a couple days later, she's like, hey, like I don't tend to feel safe around dudes, but like you're a safe person for me to be around. I really appreciate that.
Mm.
And just like it brought our friendships like this such a deep place and such a chill, calm, like, like we're ride or die friends now. And it's like, and all of that just because like I was like okay for a second to be like, I'm gonna feel what I'm feeling, and then just I'm gonna show you that I'm feeling with you instead of trying to fix things. And like that, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I was just thinking, it was like what occurred to me is like, what a gift. What a
Mm,
gift gave her that instead of trying to reassure her that it was going to be okay or like offer some, way to support or help, you were just like, I'm going to feel this with you and
mm,
I'm going to like pave the way to let you feel it with
mm,
someone instead of having to feel it alone if you want. And like it seems like that is exactly what she needed. And like that was actually really healing. And to hear her say, like, I don't really feel safe around dudes all that much, but this experience not only helped me recognize how safe it is,
mm.
you are as a person, but probably kind of like helped restore her faith in humanity a little bit, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That the don't felt strong about that one. At least her, help restore her faith in, the male persuasion a little bit. Like what again, what a gift. And you like you said, you could have gone to like therapizing or like,
Mm.
support or suggestions. And instead you went to like, let me feel this with you. Thank you. I'm so glad you did want to share that story. I think that's
Yeah,
one.
it felt like a good point to
Yeah.
share that. It felt important. So
All right, my friend. Well, it's always a pleasure to touch base with you and to get an added peek into your art of circling journey. I know we get to see each other a little bit during the course, and I get to watch you, leading circles and being in circles, and we get to discuss exercises. But like, this is such a precious thing to be able to like one-on-one really go in depth into what you're experiencing and what you're learning. And I appreciate getting to have these little bits of time with you.
me too, Corinna. I really look forward to these.
Oh, yeah. Well, wishing you a wonderful week ahead of you. And until next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Corinna.
Dear, dear. My goodness. Just unceremoniously ended the meeting instead of stopping the recording. I'll stop the
That would
recording.
have